AJ and I are going to be talking about applications and a checklist that we've recently created. I'm really excited about this new resource. We are basically walking you through every single step that you need to take to make sure that you have the highest chance of getting approved and that you get the most value in terms of points that you can use for travel that you actually want to do with a round of credit card applications. Hey everybody, welcome to the Abroaders Travel Podcast, your weekly meetup with thousands of entrepreneurs, hustlers, creators, nomads, ninjas, wanderers, and world changers, all seeking to build the skills and connections to live a life without borders. If you want to learn more about what we do or download our entire podcast archive, check out the website, abroaders.com. Happy Wednesday morning and welcome to another episode of the Abroaders Podcast. I'm Erik, checking in from Salvador, Brazil with AJ. And where are you, man? You're not in Michigan anymore.
No, I'm not. I'm not technically, but kind of. I'm pretty much in West Palm Beach, Florida. I'm down here playing some golf with my dad. I actually don't even know the name of the municipality I'm in, but it says West Palm Beach, but it's not actually West Palm Beach. It's some bogus little municipality. But yeah, man, down here playing some golf.
Good times, dude. Good. I haven't been out on the course in a bit. Okay, well, today we are going to talk through credit card applications. AJ is long overdue to apply for some new cards, and we actually just created a checklist that you guys can download just by visiting abroaders.com. If you've never been to the site before, it's going to give you an option to just opt into that and get the whole checklist and all the stuff we're going to go over today. And if not, if you don't see the pop-up, then you can just hop over to abroaders.com/apps. That's where we're going to have the show notes for today's episode. There's going to be some really good links for you guys to use to plan and execute your applications. And we're going to take you through just a big case study today to kind of go through AJ's credit and his different cards, his points, where he wants to travel, and help you guys kind of see how we work through those decisions to figure out what is the highest value application set that you can do to make sure you get as much of a savings as possible on travel.
Yeah, man. This resource is really good. I think it's actually about 5 pages of content, but it's, I think, about as concise as you can be and still pick up everything you need to know from applying for a card to actually being on the plane. You know, the actual goal is to do all this to fly. So let's start it out with actually the first bullet point on the checklist, and that is kind of a credit review. Can you improve your credit? So the key things that I'm looking for here when I go into my credit before this churn is checking the utilization. That's pretty big. That plays a big role in your credit. And also seeing if there's any blemishes that could possibly be taken care of. So I've got a couple chinks in the armor on my credit report that have been around for a while, but those haven't held me back from getting approved for cards on my last churn. I did have to call reconsideration, but I'm still ended up getting those cards. But the thing that I see that I know I'm going to want to take care of before I do any applications is taking care of the utilization. My Barclays card is over that 20% mark you want to get. So before I apply for cards, I'm going to want to pay that down. And the thing is, even if you pay your bill on time, every time in full, you're going to want to pay down the balance if your utilization is over that 20%, and especially over that 30% mark.
Right. And so the way that they sort of check that, like you said, even if you pay your monthly bill in full every month, they still report the highest balance that you achieved that month to the credit bureau. Normally, there's not too much lag time if you pay down your bill. Like, the ideal thing is to just pay it down to close to zero. You probably don't want it to be actually 0% utilization, but if you get your balance down under $100 or whatever, that's going to be the best case scenario because you're just knocking that utilization out. And I know, for example, there's one card that I was using pretty aggressively and actually went over my credit limit. And I saw my scores drop from the mid to high 700s to around 630. So I lost a huge amount. And the great thing to know about that is the utilization is totally temporary. As soon as I paid that down, there's basically no permanent residual damage that comes from having that high utilization. It's just that at that moment, if you've got the utilization really high, the banks think you're a high risk. So you got to take care of that before you make the apps.
Yeah. Now, if you do have a couple things on your credit report that you do think need to get eliminated, there's a couple options. No, Eric, you can actually pay for delete, or you can have a goodwill removal of late payments, right?
Yeah, so let's talk about both of those really quick in a little more detail. Pay for delete is something that has to do with collections. So if you've got a bill that got sent to collections, the collections company essentially has paid whoever you owe money a flat negotiated amount of money to assume responsibility for that debt. So let's say it was a hospital bill, for example. The hospital basically sold that debt to a collections, they took, maybe 40% or 50% and ate the rest, wrote it off as a loss, and the collections company assumes responsibility for collecting that debt. And they're just making a bet that they're going to do better than the hospital could, and they're going to get more money out of you eventually. What pay for delete does is it says to the collections folks, okay, you've got control of this debt now. You are the one that can actually get rid of it on my credit report. And so I'm going to promise to pay you right now in writing if you also acknowledge that you will delete that from my report. And it's really important to get that in writing first, because most of the time when you pay collections, they're going to mark it as paid, which means that it's on your report for 7 years, that yes, you paid it, it's not outstanding still, but it was late and it went to collections. And if you offer them that sort of low-hanging fruit, that carrot of, I'm going to pay you, I'm going to take all the work out of this for you, you're going to get either full amount or maybe a negotiated amount, but only if you'll delete it. They usually don't have any problem with actually deleting it, but you got to ask.
Yeah. And one final thing to keep everything protected, and this is something I ran into a little while ago, is just always we talked about this before, but always automating your minimum balance payment. And this is something that you really need to do on every card. I got a little bit sloppy on one of my cards. It was a card I stopped using. It was a card I had absolutely no balance on. And I actually got dinged up because of a late payment on an annual fee that I didn't even know existed. This was a while back, but definitely something, no matter which card you use, to make sure that you've got those minimum balance payments set up. And to take that a step further, you should really also be tracking which cards you auto pay bills with, because if I hadn't had tabs on this, I still would be without electricity in Detroit, because I had my utility bill put on a card that ended up getting stolen and I had to cancel it. So had I not been conscious of that, it just would be so easy to lose track of that. And that's actually the one thing I've done a decent job with recently is getting back in tabs with my automated bills, because your credit card, even if you pay it off in full, is an extension of your credit with the utilities if there's a disconnect between the card you're using to pay a utility bill.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I want to circle back to two things really quickly. First of all is the goodwill removal of late payments. So that minimum balance automatically being transferred from your checking account over to your credit card company is a really good way to not ever have a late payment. So that's the very bare minimum thing you should do. But if you already have a late payment, you can write a letter to the credit card company. And especially if it's the only one that you've got, a lot of times they will remove that if you ask nicely. Just, hey, I made a mistake. It's often helpful to explain some extenuating circumstances. My mom got sick. I had a family emergency. I just didn't do what I normally do and make my payment. And I've set up auto pay to make sure this never happens again. A lot of times they'll take that off your report. The second thing is it's really helpful with that auto pay bills thing that you mentioned to have mint.com tracking all of your credit cards.
Right.
Number one, you don't have to log into each and every bank's website. You don't have to go to Chase and then Citi and then Barclays to see what's going on with all your accounts. They're all in one place. And secondly, it's super easy to see which cards have recurring bills, because you just click on one of those cards and you see the last 4 months it paid your utility bill, then you canceled it. It's super easy to know, okay, I got to fix my card on file with the utility company to make sure that I don't get my lights turned off.
All right, well, let's keep this moving to the next phase, which is going to be reviewing the current cards. So, taking a look at the current cards, I've got Chase Sapphires, the U.S. Airways card, which is now an AA card, the United Explorer card. So we've got two from Chase, one from Barclays, and then a Capital One card that isn't an awards card, but it's good to take note of in regards to having a relationship with the bank.
Right. Okay. So the first thing that you want to do is make sure you've got the best links for all the cards. And one of the best resources for that is abroaders.com/cards. It's where we keep the offers up to date about the cards that we think are the best right now compared to all the ones that are available. And so the key thing to keep in mind is that if you go to Citibank's website, it's very likely that you're going to see an offer for less than the highest amount that you could get for that exact same card.
The exact same thing with American Airlines right now,
Yep.
too. They're offering 30 for the Advantage card.
Yeah, and I mean, it just happens. They don't want to give you more miles than they have to, and so if they can get you to sign up with sort of a trick by showing you an offer that's suboptimal, they're going to do it. And so you got to know that you can check either our website, or there's a lot of great blogs that follow credit card offers, and make sure that there's not currently a better offer out there for the same product. So we actually lined up a couple of different options here. One of them is the Citi Platinum Select card. It's 50,000 points after $3,000 spend in 90 days. The other one is the Chase United Explorer Business Card, which is 50,000 points after $2,000 spend in 90 days. That puts us at about $5,000 spend. You could actually probably be a little bit more aggressive. So as you're kind of looking through, you may want to have a few sort of backup cards, in case you don't get approved for the first couple that you apply for. Right now, there's not a ton of really high offers. There is currently a British Airways card that's doing 50,000 for $2,000 spend. That might be a good backup for AJ to have with Chase as a personal card. But before we get too much into that, let's talk a little bit about sort of the what you have to do to determine if you're eligible, because you don't want to spend a bunch of time looking at cards and then find out that you can't actually get the bonus on a bunch of them.
Yeah, so a big part of reviewing your eligibility or making it easy to do that is keeping track of actually when you apply for cards and when you approve for cards. So it's been a while for me. It's been a little over a year. Last application was in March of 2014. So as far as this goes, there's actually no banks off limits to go after.
Yeah, so one of the things, this is a big reason that you guys should download this cheat sheet, this checklist on the Abroader site, is that we put together the most current information that we're aware of for what your eligibility requirements are with each bank. So just to give you an example, American Express, there's two different things for pretty much all of these banks. It's whether you can get a card, whether you can apply for a card that you've never had before. And the second one that's a little bit more strict is whether you can get the bonus a second time for a card that you already had in the past. So AJ is clear on the first count for everybody, because pretty much all the banks, with some small differences in the rules, they only require that you wait around 65 days or so to apply for another card of the same type. So as long as you haven't applied for a personal card in the last 65 days, you can apply for any other personal card with the same bank. Same goes for business. So if you haven't had a business application with Chase in 65 days, you can do a business. That's kind of the first line of defense. If you're looking at doing cards that you've already had in the past, it gets a little more tricky. We're not going to go through all the rules here right now. You can get those in the guide if you want to check it out. But AJ, we discovered that you had one that actually does meet this criteria.
Yeah, the Chase United Explorer card, I actually could, if I wanted to, I could actually cancel that and get it again, because it's been more than 12 months. And if I cancel that, that would mean I currently do not have the card.
Yeah, so basically Chase, their rules here is you can't have gotten the bonus on the card within the last 12 months, and the card is not currently open. So as long as you applied, 15 months or so ago, or at least, you know the date that you got the bonus was more than 12 months ago, there doesn't seem to be any time requirement for how long the card's been closed, which is not the same with all the banks. So you want to check the individual rule. But in this case, AJ could close his card tomorrow and apply again in a week. Not very recommended, because there's a ton of good cards that he could go after right now. So he doesn't really need that. But if you're kind of stuck for options and you're really looking at trying to churn some of the cards you've had in the past, it's really important to know those rules.
Moving on to the next thing is calculating your monthly spend. This is pretty straightforward, but there's a couple things to consider. So as far as your approach goes, you just need to figure out what's your monthly burn, about how much do you spend each month that you could conceivably put on a credit card. And you probably want to be conservative on this, because you don't want to overextend yourself and be buying things you don't need to buy just to hit a minimum spend. Now, in my situation, I'm actually very fortunate that I can pay rent with a credit card if need be. Now there is, I believe it's like a $20 fee. So obviously playing the long game, you don't want to be doing that every single month. But if I could eat, 20 bucks in fees to hit one more bonus, that would be, 50,000 miles based on my travel profile. That's, a round trip pretty much anywhere I want to travel right now, then it's totally worth it. So right now, my spend is about 1K, and if we did rent in there, that could actually take me up to just shy of 3K if I wanted, because I have a roommate and I could actually pay rent for both of us.
Yeah, that's a great thing to know. And okay, so just to kind of help with the math here, if AJ does it with just his regular expenses, not counting rent, he's got about 3K spend in 90 days, which gives him enough room to do one personal card. If he adds the rent there, we're talking about closer to 7K spend, probably 6 or 7, and so that gets you at least 2 personal cards, and so that can be worth another 50,000 miles or more, and that's, like you said, enough for a one-way in business class, lots of places, or close to a round trip in economy. So spending $20 in fees 3 or 4 times. That's $80 extra out of pocket that you're going to pay and get a round trip anywhere in the world. So definitely worth doing.
Yeah, take that deal all day long. How about business spend, man?
All right, so right now we're pretty much churning over a pretty consistent $3,000 a month in business expenses. I'd maybe reduce that to $2,500 to be conservative, since some of those bills are a little bit of a pain because they're recurring. I don't want to go into every service that we're buying that's $20 a month or $30 a month and change the bill on file. So, if you just take sort of our big expenses, we're roughly at about $2,500. So that makes it possible for us to hit roughly 7K, which kind of works out pretty well because right now there's the Chase Ink Plus card that's offering 60,000 points for 5K spend in 90 days, and then the United Explorer Business, that is 2,000 spend required to get 50,000 points. So that would be a nice combo. It would keep us under 7K, and that's pretty easy for us to hit with our business spending. Let's talk about what points you have.
Yeah, so right now, taking a look at my personal points, a little bit slim on Delta, a little over 11,000. I've got just about 32,000 American, and this is an interesting one. I've got about 44,000 U.S. Airways miles that appear not to be merged properly, which is kind of funny because I actually wrote a blog post on how to get those merged.
Practice what you preach, baby.
I thought I did it. But yeah, so I've got some U.S. Airways miles floating, and then I've got a negligible amount of Chase Ultimate Rewards. Nothing to write home over. Nothing I'm going to use right now.
So let's talk a little bit about why this matters here, because you really do want to look at your points carefully. And the next thing we're going to cover is your travel goals. But you want to see what you have before you decide what to apply for. Because most of the time, your situation, AJ, you've only got 3 cards really that earn rewards. And so you've got the entire, smorgasbord of credit card points in front of you to choose from. You're going to have more good choices than you have enough spend to cover. And so figuring out what you already have and knowing how close you are to your travel goals coming up is a really big thing. And before we talk about your travel plans, I just wanted to point out 2 important things to consider. So you just did an inventory of all of your points, which is the critical first step. 11K Delta, 31K American, and 44K US Airways. That could combine with that 31 if you do, the combination right, call American up, that should work. But otherwise, you can kind of think of those separately, because remember, you have to have enough points in the single frequent flyer account to redeem. So if for some reason those end up stranded, separated, you got to think of them as a 30K balance and a 44K balance that have to be used in totally separate reservations. Mm-hmm. So what I wanted to mention here is, let's talk about Delta. You and I have business cards together that earn Amex membership rewards points. And so one of the really important things about membership rewards is that they transfer to a bunch of partners. And Amex is good in the sense that they don't limit those transfers just to a spouse. Because you're an additional card holder on our business accounts, you have your own card with AJ's name on it, then that means that we can transfer to your Delta account in your name, which is critical. So, because I have a Delta account too, I've got maybe 50,000 Delta miles. But if we need to top up your balance, say to get to 30K to go to South America, or maybe 35 to go to Europe, we can move those Amex membership rewards. And so, even though it would be great to top up your Delta account with another card application, we can keep in mind that those 75K can add to that and help you out.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the same thing with the American Airlines miles too.
Yeah, exactly.
SPG being a transfer partner, And there's, I don't know, around 50K SPG points hanging out or so.
Yeah, I think we're actually up closer to 80 now.
Okay.
But the other thing that you got to remember is that 5K bonus. So you want to do everything you can to transfer at least 20K SPG at a time, and that's going to get you 25K in the one-to-one transfer partners. They just give you that bonus when you hit the threshold of 20K. So in other words, we could move 40,000 points from SPG and get you 50,000 in your American account. Okay, so let's talk about destinations, because all these points don't matter if you don't have travel plan.
Yeah, exactly. So as of right now, we've got South America, Europe, and Asia. And this is important just because you need to figure out how many miles you need to get where you want to go. And that kind of, you reverse engineer that as far as your application and the points that you end up targeting to go after. So taking a breakdown of this, South America, Europe, and Asia, American Airlines is a pretty clear-cut winner for South America. Number one, because their chart's favorable. You can often get 20K one-ways, and their availability, I think, is probably much better than United and Delta, at least in my experience looking at that.
Yeah, and the other thing, I mean, let's just talk about connections in South America. In particular, Brazil is strong because TAM is one of Brazil's largest airlines, and they fly almost everywhere. So even if you just look for availability to Sao Paulo and Rio, which frankly is where you're going to find most of the long-haul routes from the U.S., you've still got the ability to connect to other places like Florianopolis or Iguazu Falls or Salvador. And so that's a really key thing, and it's a good reason to use your American points there. Now, the next piece of it is you're thinking about Europe, and American is actually pretty bad for Europe because they have those fuel surcharges on anything that routes through London on British Airways.
Right. So United is actually a really good play here. And if you want to get exotic with redemption and you want to pair Europe and Asia, United is absolutely the clear-cut winner, considering that they allow you to go to Asia via Europe.
Yeah, we actually just got a good Ask Me Anything question. Maybe we can go over it on next week's show. I'm not sure if we're going to have time today, but basically, what routings are allowed with United, and they have the most ridiculously flexible and generous routing rules. You can stop in Europe on the way to Asia and literally pay the same thing that you'd pay for a round trip to Europe. So, definitely worth it. So, in other words, AJ is sort of prioritizing. Okay, he's blocking off some AA miles for South America, and he knows that if he gets some United miles, which he doesn't have right now, he can use those for Europe and Asia, possibly in combination. If absolutely necessary, it's possible to fly back from Asia with the American miles or something like that. That's a good kind of backup plan in the sense that it would be avoiding using the American miles for Europe and potentially having to work your way around those high fuel surcharges. Okay, so now that we've got your spend, we've got your travel plans, and we've got your current points, it's time to decide which offers make the most sense for you to go for right now. And the key thing in this step, and this is in the checklist as well, is you want to plan this out, make sure that you have the best links for each card, and then apply for all of those offers on the same day. And the reason for that is the banks aren't going to be able to see that you're applying for cards with all of their friends, or competitors rather. And so that's going to make it look a little bit less risky. Chase thinks they're the only one, and so they're going to be a little bit more keen to approve you, rather than if you apply for one each day for a week, they're going to see, the last bank is going to see that you already applied for 6 cards this week. That looks a little bit desperate. So it's nice to keep them together. And if you do them all on the same day, the advantage is that if you find out it doesn't work, and you don't get approved for one, even after you call reconsideration, you can put in a substitute card or kind of come up with a backup plan to still fill that gap that was left in your available spend from the card that you didn't get approved for.
All right, and one important thing you're going to want to do with these applications is take a screenshot of each application page that lists the offer. The main thing that this will do is kind of just serve as your receipt for what the deal is. What is the bonus supposed to be? What is minimum spend supposed to be? Because there have been times in the past where an offer has changed and people have been shortchanged on a bonus, and all it takes is a call saying, hey, when I signed up for this card, there was supposed to be a 75,000 point bonus. I only got 50. What gives? I've got a screenshot of it here. Here's the date. And it also just helps you track your own stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. The last tip here is to make sure that you call the bank if you're not instantly approved for the card. And a lot of people screw this up, and I think it's just like people are apprehensive about making a phone call and talking to somebody at a bank. It feels kind of high pressure. It makes people nervous. And the thing is, there's a couple of major reasons why you have to do this. Number one, if you get a pending decision we've seen that a lot of times banks actually lose track. I mean, it's not super common, but banks sometimes never even have a record of the application. And so it's really important. If you don't get an instant approval that says your card is in the mail, it's on the way, then call the bank, make sure they have your application, make sure they got all the information you submitted. And a lot of times the reconsideration is literally as simple as like verifying your name and your address. Like, it's not always that they're asking you about your income and about all these other things that are sort of credit factors to get approved. Sometimes they do that too, and we're going to actually share some reconsideration calls. There's a link to a guide that goes over that. And then AJ is actually going to do this round of applications that we went over this week. And so he's going to make a round of applications. Next show, we're going to report on what cards he applied for, what the results were of those applications, and any reconsideration calls that happen. And so this should be kind of interesting because I know that, your credit, there's definitely things longer term we could improve on, but I think that would be really helpful for people to just sort of see that whole process close the loop.
Yeah, man, I definitely agree. I think that could be useful, especially some recordings of reconsideration calls, because I'm pretty sure that'll be the case.
One important announcement is that we are hosting our first ever live webinar. And we're going to be going through this checklist and doing a live Q&A. So right now we've already got close to 200 people that are registered. There's going to be 2 sessions. One of them is at 1 p.m. Eastern today. The other one is at 9 p.m. So you can choose the one that's going to be the best fit. Should be roughly the same content on both webinars. And we're going to be answering questions. So, if you've got specific things that you want to find out about with respect to where you're planning to travel, whether you're eligible for certain credit cards, this webinar is going to be a phenomenal resource, and it's live. We probably aren't going to do a replay, at least not of the entire thing. So you got to be there if you want to get the information, and we would love to have you. You can register for that at abroaders.com/webinar. All right, well, that's going to do it for this week. This week's International Jam comes from a group based in the state of Bahia, Brazil. They're called Scambo, and I really, really love these guys. They're great for learning Portuguese and just have a pretty cool sound. They're one of those bands that is beloved and known by a lot of people here in Bahia, but haven't really hit the big time. And in fact, they just launched on Spotify a couple of days ago. I think they got some exposure in one of the major news networks, and Spotify finally picked up Scambo. So I'm really glad to hear that. And so it reminded me that we haven't put any of their stuff on the show as an international jam. This song is called Meu Bem, which is roughly something like honey, kind of a term of endearment, and it's just a really good jam. These guys actually have a free show coming up in Salvador next Saturday, so if on the off chance any of you guys are in town, let me know and we can check that out together. Otherwise, I will be back next Wednesday, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Wherever you are, travel safe. Eu só não sei. Hey brothers, don't be shy. Hop over to the website and join our email list for exclusive travel hacking content. If you like what we're up to, the best way you can support the show is by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. Lastly, we would love to hear from you, so send your show feedback to Erik or AJ at abroaders.com. We will see you next week. Ontem eu te vi, linda. Depois de 3 anos, você